But the concerts began with a lot of generalizations about technology, really stiff, like what will theater look like on the net, blah, 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 And at one point, we're having a lot of trouble with the audio in our studio, and so they kept saying, Frankfurt, could you please get off the line? Now, it's not that I personally mind being asked to leave, but since I was Frankfurt, I took it pretty personally. So finally we worked it out and continued, but the high point was definitely Pincus, who suddenly came online, and his voice is like extra loud, like he was using one of the first phones ever invented, and he's shouting, "Hey, Laurie, can you hear me? Is this thing working? It's nice to meet you. Say, how much did you practice the violin today?" And this really caught me off guard, because this was an actual question, something I had to answer, and suddenly I had to respond, and I don't know why I did this. Maybe I just panicked, I said, 8 hours. Practiced for 8 hours. No, I've practiced for 8 hours since I was about 12. But I don't know really why I said that. Maybe because his voice reminded me of my violin teacher, who I also lied to about the amount of time that I practiced. And anyway, Pincus went on, so he was like very enthusiastic about this new toy. He was moving around and making these gestures, and I was watching his hands and thinking, what a great master class he could do this way. And I thought, you could do so many things this way. Like Marty Scorsese could meet with young filmmakers and talk to them about their movies and all sorts of things. And anyway, Pincus went on. Okay, so Laurie, so you're in Frankfurt. Now just go over to the Alta Opera, and just to your right, look to your right, and you'll see this fantastic Italian restaurant, and it's the best in Germany, and tell them Pincus sent you. And that did it for me. That was really practical. And I did go over to the restaurant. It was closed, by the way, but nothing's perfect. Anyway, back to control rooms. The main thing, at least in America, is that computers have a lot to do with work. And work is a sort of religion in America. We actually call it the work ethic. You turn on the TV and there are all these shows about people working. Doctors, lawyers, and cops, spacemen, teams of people on the job. So you come home from work and you turn on the TV and you watch these other people work. And then after these shows, there's this news, and the newscasters are sitting behind their desks working. And after that, it's down to the talk show host, and he's still at work too, even though by now it's about midnight. And he's still sitting behind a desk. He's like this workaholic, the last guy to leave the office kind of guy. And he's got a phone, and he always seems sort of pressed for time. We really like work a lot. Now, most of these TV work teams, whatever their jobs, have a boss. And he, she is fill-in-the-blank precinct captain, top surgeon, anchorman, white-haired head of the law firm. And this character is usually pretty empathetic. Someone who's got the big picture, calm, in control. And these are the characters the plots usually hinge on. Now, one's thinking of these two well-known epic American stories that are about work and control. And they're both stories about teams of people working in ships. And the stories are Star Trek and Moby Dick, and their ships, the Enterprise and the Pequod. Now these stories are separated by almost 150 years, and although they have a lot in common, very long voyage, powerful captain, dangerous encounters, wild adventures, they couldn't be more different. Now in the Star Trek series, the ship is pretty high-tech, and the immaculate workers are endlessly typing commands into their computers and talking into their headsets, presumably affecting the course of the ship somehow. But the person who's really in charge is up on the bridge, and the plot of each episode is the same. Everyone is working away, and suddenly the ship goes out of control for some reason or other, and the captain starts yelling from the bridge. I've lost control. I've lost control of the ship. Now, losing control is the worst thing that could happen. And the whole plot of the story is how the captain regains control of the ship. And it's no coincidence that the whole drama happens in the control room. Now, in Moby Dick, the ship is also pretty high-tech by 19th century standards. A kind of a floating factory. And there's the hard-working crew and the captain. Except, in this ship, the captain is completely crazy. But what finally happens is Moby Dick is pretty horrendous. The captain goes more or less insane. The ship is snapped in half. The crew drowns. And the captain is dragged to the bottom of the ocean by the whale he's been fanatically hunting. The end. And there aren't even any little epigrams, like in King Lear, when at the end, the king learns that he can love some people just a little bit. In Moby Dick, it all just ends. And it's such an incredibly dark story. I mean, you can't imagine telling a story like that now. For example, the Enterprise explodes in a huge accident, and all the debris from the wreck gets sucked into a black hole, and in the last shot, there's a single spaceman turning around, swinging around and around, alone in space. Call me Ishmael. The end. This would never happen, even if it was the very last episode, and the series was slated to go permanently off the air. But what I'm trying to say is that here we are in the late 20th century, and we're designing our own